What's up, friends? Dan Vega here, and today we're going to be talking about how to log in to a Spring Boot application from the client. So I have this example here. I will leave a link to the tutorial in the description below. We walked through setting up a Spring Boot application using Spring Security and how to authenticate using JWT using a username and password posted in the request body. So we went through that example, and a lot of the comments I got were great, but how do I call this from the front end? And I thought that was interesting. So I thought I would spend some time today and build out a client that talks to this service. So we're going to use a lot of my favorite tools today. If you don't know, I'm a huge fan of building for the web, front-end technologies. We're going to use something called Vite, which, if you're not aware, is this really great build tool, really fast, that is framework agnostic. It supports a bunch of different frameworks like Vue and Svelte and React, Vanilla.js. So whatever you want to build it in, you can use Vite. I'm going to use Vue, but again, you can kind of plug in whatever you like to use, and it should be pretty similar. So here we are in this application. I just want to kind of get us up to date with where we are. I updated it a little bit, so I've added support for Spring Boot 3.0. When I did that, we had to come back to the security config. It used to use authorized requests, so we've updated that to authorized HTTP request. And it used to use an ANT matcher, so now we're using a request matcher. And here we're basically saying for the token, go ahead and permit all. Anybody can call the token because that's how you get a token back, a JOT. Anything else needs to be authenticated. So we have things like a home controller in here that has a couple mappings, just the root mapping. And then we also have a Git mapping for secure. So this one is secure. So this is the example. I'll go ahead and leave a link to this GitHub repository in the description below. You're gonna have to pull this one down, run this service, and then we're gonna build the client separately. So with that, let's go ahead and pop over to the command line and start building our client. All right, so I mentioned Vite. If you want to learn a little bit more about Vite, head over to vitejs.dev. In there, you'll see the getting started. You can run the command npm create vite at latest. That'll take you into a scaffolding tool that gives you some options. So if you want to run with something other than Vue, if you want to use like Vanilla.js or React, use this tool. If you do want to use Vue though, if you look at the vuejs.org website under Quick Start, it gives you a command npm init Vue at latest. So this is using Vite underneath the hood, but this is using create Vue. The reason we want to do this is it gives us a bunch of options for things like Pina for state management, which we are going to use. We are going to use TypeScript, and we are also going to use routing. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to head over to a command line. I'm going to say npm init Vue at latest. It's going to drop us in here and say, what is the project name? I'm going to call this auth demo. Do we want to add TypeScript? Yes, I do. Do I JSX? No. Vue router? Yes. Pina? Yes. I'm going to say no for testing just to keep this a little bit simpler. No to ESLint, and we have our project created. So I'm going to go ahead and cd into auth demo, and inside of auth demo, I'm going to run npm install. And now I can go ahead and run npm run dev. And our server is startup, you can see extremely quickly on port 5173. So let's head over to the browser. And there you go. You get this really nice landing page. You did it. You successfully created a project with Vite and Vue 3. What is next? A really nice default template gives you links to things like documentation, tooling, the ecosystem, community, and supporting Vue. So great. So now what I want to do is actually go ahead and open this up in Visual Studio Code. So from the command line, I'll type code and just this directory, which will put us into Visual Studio Code. All right, so the first thing I need to do is clean a few things up. I'm not going to use these components in here. So what I'm going to do is just come in and go ahead and delete these. So I don't need that, I don't need that, I don't need that, and I don't need that. So now components is completely clear. We are importing some of that in here. So I'm going to get rid of this hello world component. And actually some of this is kind of the same, but let's just get rid of it. I want to start fresh. So let's get rid of all of this. And there we go. Now also in our main TypeScript here. We are, yes, pulling in some assets main CSS. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. I don't actually need base CSS or logo either, so I'm going to get rid of those. And I think that is all we need to do. So let's get rid of this line here. And yeah, so that looks good for kind of cleaning this up. Again, we are using Pina. If you're not familiar with Pina, it's the new recommended tool for state management. It's actually really easy to use. We've included it, we've imported it here, and we're just saying app.use, create Pina. And we're also using the view router. So Pina is these stores in here. So whenever we create a store, it created a default store for us that you could take a look at. We'll actually get rid of that as well. And then there is a router. There's an index for router. We can use this as kind of our base. So that looks good. Everything looks pretty good so far. Now that we've cleaned up our app, we can start to customize this. All right, next I'm going to add Tailwind CSS to my project. I'm a big fan of Tailwind. If you don't want to use Tailwind, that's fine. You can kind of style mainly just the pages and like the login form. That's what I'm using it for. So to do that, I'm going to say npm create npm install -d. So Tailwind CSS, we are installing post CSS and auto prefixer. So I'm just grabbing this from the documentation. We're installing those three libraries as dev dependencies. Next, we are going to npx Tailwind CSS init. So this is going to create us a Tailwind config.js and a post CSS config.js. Next, what we want to do is open up our Tailwind config. So we have this, the content that we want to go ahead and replace. I'm pulling this from the documentation. This could just be that. So that will do. And then finally, what we need to do is we need to open up our, we need to create a new style sheet. So let me just say in here, assets, CSS, whoops, let's go ahead and rename that to CSS. And then inside of CSS, I will create a new file called tailwind.css. So in there, I'm just pulling in Tailwind-based components and utilities. We're going to save that, and then I need to include that the same way that we did before. Great, let's go ahead and run. Actually, let's just do a quick test here. Let's open up app, and inside of here, in the template, I will go ahead and create a div, and inside this div, I will just say hello world, and inside of this, I will say class is equal to min h screen and bg, let's just say gray 100. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to run npm run dev. And we do have an error, the welcome. So this is inside of home view. Yes, we have some views. So I'm going to get rid of those. And now we should be okay. Now we should be okay. Let's run npm run dev. All right, and I forgot I needed to clean up my routes because I don't have those views anymore. So let's just start fresh here and npm run dev. And it looks like we're running now. Let's head over to the browser. And that may not be obvious to see, so let's just go ahead and clean something else up. I'm going to go into app.view, and I'm going to say container mx auto. We'll just give it a little bit of padding, and there we go. So now we have our container, which is in the middle with hello world. And then again, you can always add some padding to this, but that looks a little bit more clear that Tailwind is indeed installed and working. All right, so the first thing I might have to tackle here is the main app.view. I'm going to have to set this up so that we can have some links to go to the dashboard and maybe log out. And then that will actually have to use the router view as well. And then we'll have to create a couple views, one for the dashboard view and one for the login view. Once we have that set up, we can now go into our router and say basically, hey, everything but the login view needs to be locked down. So how do we do that? First, I don't need this. Let's get rid of that for now. In here, I'm going to go ahead and create a header. And inside of this header, I'm going to give it a class of padding 8. And we're going to create a new nav here. So let's say nav. And inside the nav, I'm going to have a couple router links. So one will have to the root. So that'll be our home. So we'll say, actually, let's call this dashboard. And then where do we want to do inside of here? Let's just create another link. I'm going to actually create just a, actually instead of a router link, I'm just going to do a href, and let's say class ML4, just to give it a little margin left. We'll also do maybe some text indigo. Let's do 400. And we'll give this a click handler, which will go to logout, which we'll come back to. And we'll say logout. And that's okay. And actually, because we haven't defined this yet, let's just get out of that for now. Okay, so I have basically a link that goes to dashboard, and then I can obviously create other links if I wanted to. So I can come in here and say like about products. And that would be our links to those navigation items. So then what I need here is a way to display whatever view we're on. So outside of the header, I'm going to create a new main element here, and let's give it a class of padding 8, and width we'll just say, let's just say like half of it. And this is where the router view is going to go. So that's going to display whatever is the current view. All right, so under views, I'm going to create a new view. We're going to call this dashboard view.view. And let's just say this is a view. So script setup. This is actually this is actually going to be lang equals ts. And then I don't need a style here. In the template, we're just going to have an h1. And in here, we'll have a class of, let's say, text equals like 3L, and we'll give it some margin bottom of 8. We'll call this dashboard as the header. And then inside of here, we'll just say this is the dashboard. Okay, so with that in place, I'm going to go back over to my router, and I'm going to define a route for this. So this takes a path, which we will call the root. This is going to take a name. We'll call this home, or we can call this dashboard. That sounds good. And then the component is going to be what are we going to use as the component. So I'll say dashboard view, and that imported that, but let's call this just dashboard view, and that looks good. So now I don't think I'm running here, so let's go npm run dev. And so now we have some things going on here. So let's go back to app. I really don't need these. They were just there for a test. And so now I have the dashboard. That doesn't look like 3XL. Let's go back. Text 3XL. That's better. All right. So there's our homepage. This is our navigation up here. We just have a dashboard and we have a logout. So now we need one more view. We need to create the login view. So I'm going to go ahead and actually copy this because it's going to be pretty similar. So new file, login view view. We're going to say login. Now the difference here is this is going to pull in a component. So we want to create a new component that is called our login form. So let's say login form.view, and now this is a component. If we wanted to use it elsewhere, we could. All right, let's start with script lang equals TypeScript. This is going to be setup. Under here, I'm going to go ahead and paste some code in so we don't have to watch me type this out. Basically, it's just a form. So on form, on submit, we're going to call a method called submit. Let's just go ahead and say on submit. And we will console.log form submitted. Great. And we are preventing the default there. Then we have a username, and that username is using a V model for user.username. So we will need to set up a reactive property here. So let's say const user is equal to reactive. Username, password. Yeah, that looks good. We need to import this. Add import from view. Nope, that's not right. We just want import reactive from view. Cool. So now we have our username. We have our password. And again, we just have some Tailwind in here styling up our form. So now if we go back to our login.view, now we should be able to go ahead and include that. So let's say login form. And I'm not sure. I don't know why it's not auto importing that. Let's just go ahead and import login form from components, login form.view. Okay. So far so good. Now we can't get to the login form because we don't have a route for that yet. So we're going to open this back up. We're basically copying this. So this is going to be /login. We'll say login, and then this is going to be the login view. And this is going to be same thing here, login view from login view. Cool. So it looks like we have one little error here. Let's fix that. And now what we have to do is we have to force it to go to the login view if we're not logged in. So how can we do that? So what we can do is we can say before each on the router, we are going to do something. I'm going to make this async, and we'll just say to. And inside of here, we are going to say, what are our public pages? So our public pages might be something like just right now, login. So anybody can get to login. So then we have to say basically, if that isn't the case, if you're not on login, then I need you to authenticate. So we are going to say auth required if it's not public pages. So if we're not in the public pages array here, then auth is required. So if auth is required, now we'll have to do another check here. So we'll have to say if auth is required and the user is not logged in, do this. But I don't have a authentication mechanism yet, so I just want to force us to go to the login. So all I'm going to do is say return /login. Okay, so that is looking better. Now our login form looks better if I have a full page, but I don't have a full page right now, so let's fix that. So our login view pulls in our login form. Our login form is here and before. Oh, did we say on the app part that we were? Yes. So let's just set this to full for now. And there we go. So now we are displaying our login form no matter what. If I try to go back to dashboard, I am automatically sent to the login page. I'm going to refresh and I'm sent to the login page. So now if I go ahead and open up the console, we can see nothing's going on. I'm going to try and log in, and we just see that the form was submitted. All right, so now this is where we need to start to work on this piece. And this is where I'm going to go ahead and close all of this up. This is where Pinia comes in. So we need a state management system to basically say, are you logged in? If not, here are some actions to be able to log in and log out, right? So to do that, we need to store some state. So this isn't going to be an introduction to Pinia if you're interested in that. I could do something, or there are plenty of resources out there on getting started with Pinia. But I'm going to create a new store. I'm going to call this auth.ts. And inside of here, I'm going to export const. And then the convention here is use and then the name of the store. So ours is going to be auth store. And we're going to define store, and that is going to be the start of it. So now we have an ID of auth. We are going to have some state. So that's a good start. Inside of state, I am going to return an object. That object is going to have a user. Let's just say null for now. I'm going to have a token. Let's say null for now. And I'm going to have a return URL, and we'll just say that that is the root. So this is the beginning of our state. So I am returning that. Why is that there? That's an error, Dan. Okay, so I am returning that. Okay, so now I need some actions. So I'm going to have actions, and then I can have, I don't know why I'm still getting this error, user null, token null, auth state. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Fun times. Okay. So then we'll have some actions, and inside of actions, these are going to be our methods. So we're going to have one called login. I'm going to make this async, and this is going to take a username, which is a string. This is also going to take a password, which is a string. So now what we want to do is, so that's pretty close, but we're actually just going to use fetch. So what I want to do is I want to get a response back. I am going to await a fetch call. So our fetch call is going to go to HTTP localhost 8080. So that's our Spring Boot app. Remember the URL for that was just, I think it was just token. So we'll just say just token. And then there's some more here. We got to say that this is a post. We are going to set some headers. So I want to say that I am sending a content type of application.json. And then I need to send the body as part of the post request. And you can see we're getting some help here. So stringify. And what we want to stringify is the username and password, right? So that is that. And that is what we are getting as arguments here. So that should be our call. Let's just go ahead and try that and see what we get back, right? So what I want to do is basically just log out a couple of things. I want to say response.status. And how about response.text? Yes, let's get the text, because what is being returned from the Spring Boot application is a token. That's our JOT token. So we should be able to see that if we log in correctly. So I'm going to log in incorrectly and get a status of, hopefully 401. But then if we log in correctly, this should be 200. This should be our JOT. let's just go back to our Spring Boot application and make sure that is up and running. Okay, and it is. So let's say, something that doesn't work. And so we actually have to call this. I forgot about that. So let's go back to our login form. On submit, we are just saying that the form was submitted. So we need to do something a little bit more here. We need to say, let's just do a quick check. Let's say if user.username is not equal to empty and user.password is not blank, let's go ahead and log in. Let's try and log in. So now how are we going to log in? So we want to use our auth store because that has the action to log in. So I'm going to say use auth store. You see that gets pulled in for me from stores auth. So I'm going to use auth store.login, and then we're going to pass the user.username and user.password. And just if we want to just be sure, we can go ahead and log out the user here. So that looks okay. Define store is not defined. Okay, so we've just forgot to pull something in here, right? Okay, let's try this again. So there's our username and our password. Access to fetch at localhost 8080/token from origin 5173 has been blocked. So good, we have a CORS issue. We can fix that. All right, so I've done a separate video on this. I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but we can go ahead and do CORS here. So with defaults, and then all we need to do is define a new bean. So we'll say bean, and then this is going to be CORS configuration source. So CORS configuration source. That looks good. And then we just need to define a few things. So CORS configuration, we'll call this configuration is equal to new CORS configuration. Right, that looks good. So now from the configuration, we can set a couple of things. So set allowed origins. Let's start there. This is a list, so you can say list.of. And that list.of right now is just going to be one. So localhost 5173. This will be a get. So we are sending a get or a post. And then configuration.set allowed headers. So what headers are we sending? So again, a list, and this will be authorization and content type for now. So that's what our requests look like. They're get or post to this particular endpoint. These are the headers that may be included. So then we need a URL-based CORS configuration source. It's equal to new. Yep. And then we can set register CORS configuration. We want to do that. This particular one is for everything. We'll say configuration. And then finally, we can return the source. So that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and restart our application. Head back over to our front-end application and see if anything has changed. Cool, so now we are getting a 401. So we're trying to post this username and password. We're getting a 401 back, and that is not good. So what I want to post is dvega and password. And if we do that, we get a 200 and a promise. And then you could see the promise was fulfilled and the token is in there. So we are making some progress. This is good to see. So now what I want to do is just remove these logs. And what I'm going to say is if the response.status is equal to 200, so if we got a good one back, let's get the token. So this is, again, we saw that over here. This is a promise. We need to await the response.text, right? So now we got the token. We can say this.user is equal to the username, right, that we got passed. We can say this.token is equal to token. And then I want to go, so actually let me look at this. This user, why is this complaining? So this is, okay. And then once we've, once we've set the user and the token, now we can use the router, not the router key. I want to say router.push this.return URL. And if for whatever reason that is empty, I'll just go here, I guess. Yeah. So I need to bring this in, I think. So router, why is this pointing router key? We don't need that. Cool. So that's our login. Let's see if that will work. So now once we store this.user and this.token, the user will be set here. So now from our store or from our router, we can add this one other quick check, right? So now what we want to do is we want to say const auth is equal to use auth store. And now that we have auth, we could say and auth and not auth.user. So if auth.user is not there, then go ahead and return to login. So I'm going to refresh this page again, and I keep going to login, even if I go here. So now what I want to do is try and log in with dvega and password, sign in, and we're not getting back any errors. So let's go to the local host. Let's see. Let's go ahead and pull up our trusty view DevTools so we can see that indeed we have stored dvega and a token in our auth state. We are saying use auth here. Let me see if this is just a case of we need to rerun this. So npm run dev and dvega password. Okay, so we have the right token in there. I should be able to go to home. And not if auth is required. Yep, and not auth.user. Then go here. Else we should be good. All right, so I think I probably want to set this to null, but I know I was getting an error. So let's just say if it's not equal to, or if auth.user is equal to blank, then we are here. Oh, so we are not storing this every time. There we go. So now we're on the dashboard. So I think this was a case of, okay, that's gone. This was a case of we want this to be null. So let's just say here. And then in our, what is this? Sorry. Over here, we do want this to be null. And null. Actually, we don't care about this one, right? So I want that to be null. So this dot user Okay, so I'm still getting an error here. Let's just do this. I'm gonna turn off strict null checks. Then we're okay there. So now if I go ahead and log in, password, that works. Now I'm able to get to the dashboard. So cool. So now the only other thing is we need a logout function. So let's go back to here. So we have, this is our login function. So we need a logout function. And in the logout function, we're basically just going to set this .user to null, this .token to empty, and we're going to push you back to the login, right? So dvega password, no. So we see our auth object here has the correct properties in it, and then I can go ahead and log out, which actually doesn't do anything yet. So this is a good time to go ahead and fix that. So where is that? That's an app. We have a logout. So how can we fix that? We can simply say const store. Let's just say auth is equal to use auth store. So we're pulling an auth store, and then we could say function logout, and then we could say auth.logout. Let's see if that works. Please don't do this every time. Let's see. Auth store installed. Use auth store. Auth.logout. Oh, we need to put this back. So click logout. Okay. And there we go. It's cool. We're moving right along. Now, you might be asking yourself, why does it reset every time, right? So this is in the, if we look at view, DevTools, we have this token, we have this user. What happens, why when I refresh it, do these get cleared out? All right, to illustrate that, I've added a new route for /about. It's just an about page. So if I go to about or dashboard, I'm still forced to log in. So if I go dvega password login, I get to the dashboard because that is our default route. But now I can go over to about, and I can go back to dashboard, and I go to about, and you see the state is persisted between those. This is because we are in a single page application. Now, as soon as I reload the page, you'll see that state is gone. So there are a couple different ways that you can handle this. Pina does have a plugin ecosystem, so you can write your own plugin or pull plugins in. Basically, the way that you would handle that is, extract this out, and then you can handle your own way of doing it here. In any case, the solution to this is using local storage. Now, you could do this on your own here, and we're going to give this a shot. So what I want to do here is the user, I want to say local storage.getItem is user, or it's going to be null. So wait, actually, let's do this. If there is something in local storage for getItem, I actually want to parse what is there. So local storage.getItem user or null, right? That doesn't look like it's letting me do that. Let's do this. Okay, this is JSON.parse, right? So we are getting the local storage out of there. And there's an easy way to do this. You can say null. Right? I want to say either get that or it's null. Did I miss one? I did. Okay, so there. So now I'm basically trying to get it out of local storage. If it is there, I'm going to parse it. And then if it's not, I want to set null. So I could do pretty much the same thing here. So for token, I'm just going to say token and token. Okay. Yes. So now what I want to do is when I get the response back, I need to set those, right? So I also want to local storage.set item, JSON.stringify equals token. Yeah, that looks good. Local storage.set item, user, and then username. Yeah, that looks good. Now I could extract this out, create a simpler method to kind of handle both of these. But again, in a real world, I probably would create a plugin for Pina for this, but I just want to try and keep this a little bit simple. And then maybe here we say yes. So then when we log out, we also need to clear these. So I also need to say local storage dot remove item user, and then local storage dot remove item token. So cool. So now if I go ahead and reload this, now if I say dvega password, let's go ahead and sign in. We are signed in. So we have our object here in Pina. Let's go over to the application tab and look in local storage. And we see that we have a token and a user here. So now the next time that this reloads, it should look for it, and it does, and it puts it back in there for us. So cool. So now we are able to go across our single page application, and we are also able to persist across page reloads. Good, good, good. This is coming together. I want to do one more thing. So here in the dashboard view, we want to go off to our Spring Boot application. So if we jump back over to Spring Boot, in the home controller, I don't have a dashboard controller. I thought I had just a controller that sent some text back. What does this send back? This should return that. So let's just ask for this. So let's just change this to that and restart. And we should get this. So what I want to do now is in the dashboard, I want to make a call to that. But remember, we have the token. We have to send the token. So we're going to try it without the token first, and then we'll try it with the token. So const auth is equal to use auth store. So we get that. We want the token. So the token is equal to auth.token. And let's go ahead and set up some reactive data here. Basically, the message that we're going to get back. This will just be a ref. Used to IntelliJ. Let's see. That's what I want to do. Okay. So now what I want to do is say on mounted. What do I want to do? I want to make an async call to. Let's get the, so let's say const response is equal to await fetch. Now this is going to be localhost 8080. And this is just the root, right? We didn't, yeah, it's just the root. So we're going to try and get that message. Now eventually we are going to send some headers in here. But I just want to see what happens when we do this without it. So then we can say data.value is equal to await response.text, right? So let's try this first. Let's try and reload this. On mounted is not defined. Let's go ahead and import that. And I'm going to reload. localhost 8080 401. So we have a 401 here because we are not sending the token along with it. So we want to say authorization bearer, and then here's the token.value. So let's go ahead and reload that. We are still getting a 401. Let's see. Let's log out. All right, 401. All right, so I wonder if it's because of this. So still getting a 401. We're sending authorization bearer, and here is the token. I don't think that, do we need? Yeah, I don't need value. I don't know why I was thinking that. That's not a reactive property. So let's try this. Okay, 404. Now that's good. So we are REST controller, home controller. Let's just call this home, and let's make sure our security config is allowing. Everything else is just authenticated. Oh, you know what? I didn't restart that application. So that was probably it. So I'm just going to say home here. And let's reload this, and we are getting a 401 still. Let's log out. All right, now we are in business. So now I am not getting an error. I'm on here, data.value is equal to this. Let's change this to data. And refresh this, and there we go. So that message is coming from our server now. So this is the message that's coming from the Spring Boot controller saying hello, and then it gets the actual authenticated principal and returns that string. So that was a lot. There is a lot that goes into this. I don't know if something like React, or I'm sure Vanilla JS doesn't make this any easier, but I wonder if either of those make this easier. There's a lot here because state management on the client side, there's a lot that goes into it. And we had to set up everything. We had to set up a brand new project. We had to set up routing so that we can go to different routes. We had to set up a router guard so we could block certain routes. We had to set up a store so we can have state management in our application. And we had to set up all these views, and I set up Tailwind. So yes, there was a lot that goes into this. But once you have this general approach down, it's pretty easy. It's nice and simple, and it just works. So I really hope this helped kind of tie the front end to the back end when it comes to Spring Boot, JWT authentication, and how to do it from the client. So, hey, if this helped out, if you found value in this, friends, do me a favor, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and as always, happy coding, friends.
There we go.